Hello and welcome. I am Carl from Beast Made Reviews, and today I want to talk to you about an item that's very close to my heart because it was my father's. And we talk a lot on this channel about things that have a tangible sense of quality to them. And I would say that this is probably one of the pieces that has both a very tangible feeling of quality, but also an intangible sense of nostalgia that I carry with it. So this is actually my father's old Mackinaw wool Filson cruiser jacket. Now I know that's a mouthful, but I would like to tell you a little bit about the history of this jacket very briefly, and I'm going to show you some of the features and how something that's made well, even if it's 40 years old, this was probably about late 70s, early 80s. I know he had it before I was born. However, it doesn't show some of the signs of the very vintage Filson jackets, which have the Filson name printed on the button and a couple of other telltale signs. I'm estimating that this is probably close to 35 years old, if I had to guess, 35 to 40 years old. Something this old can look almost new if it's, number one, well taken care of, but more importantly, well made to begin with. The Filson Mackinaw Cruiser. Let's break down that name just a little bit. The Mackinaw is actually named after the place where they started sourcing this woolen material, and this was actually originally these jackets were made of the blankets they were making in the area at the time, and the jackets were much longer, somewhere down below the knee. The problem is that if you were going out hiking through the woods and you had a long jacket and you're in, say, Upper Washington, or even here in New England, we can get some pretty deep snow up here. If you're trying to walk through some deep snow, that long jacket is gonna slow you down. So they shortened it. And the cruiser in the name Mackinaw Cruiser actually comes from timber cruisers. And now timber cruisers were people who would go out into the woods and give estimates for the yield of lumber on a certain portion of land. And what they would do is basically survey, and they would be out in the elements from the summer to the winter, everything in between. So they needed some really decent clothing to keep them warm. And that's where this jacket came from. So this actually has remained virtually unchanged since the very late 1800s when they developed this. It's gone through several different color combinations. The original, I believe, is this buffalo plaid that they have here. One of the great things about buffalo plaid is that it's very visible, so if you take this out into the woods, there's not a really good chance you're gonna be mistaken for a deer. So that was one of the original versions. I'm actually kind of happy that this is in buffalo plaid. While it's not exactly a dressed up fabric, it looks really cool. It's definitely authentic to the part. Some of the carryovers from the 1800s to now, today, 2018, are like this pocket here. They have a pocket on the upper left chest which opens up. It has two sections to it, a back section which is pretty large, and then on the front here where you can keep pens, there's actually spaces for 4 pens. And think about it, if you're out in the woods and you're giving estimates for portions of land, you're gonna need something to write with and something to write on. So that's why they have this. And to be honest with you, with a heavy jacket like this, you could load it up with pens and close that flap and totally forget they're there until you need a pen. So this has actually come in really handy for me in the past. Overall, the exterior of this particular jacket has 4 pockets, 2 large chest pockets and 2 large pockets below that with side entrances for hand warmers. The interesting thing about the Mackinaw Cruiser, however, is what they call a game pocket or a map pocket, which is actually the back of this jacket is double lined and it has pockets on either side, flat pockets with snaps, which you can reach in, and the whole back is basically one gigantic pocket. Now, I don't think that you'd want to go out and maybe hunt rabbit and then put a rabbit in the back of your jacket, but maps certainly, and if you're out and you're cruising lumber and looking for areas that you're going to be cutting down, you're gonna need some maps. I haven't really found much use for this, with the exception of maybe throwing a hat or a pair of gloves back there, but the pockets on the front are so deep and so voluminous that I could actually fit my gloves and my hat and basically anything else I want in the front without a problem. Now, as far as this wool goes, if you've ever felt one of these before, and since they've been around for a long time, I'm sure you've come in contact with one of these jackets. If you've ever felt this before, it is what you would think of when you think of a woolen fabric. Not so much today's merino wools and cashmeres and softer versions of wools. This is definitely the scratchy, itchy type of wool. However, it's also very, very hard wearing. And as you can see, even around the cuffs, There is no fraying, there is nothing. I mean, and I know he used to wear this when he would go fishing. Some of the stitching has come a little bit loose here, but besides that, there is no wearing in the elbows, no wearing in the typical stress points, friction points where your arms are moving, or in the edges of the pockets, the first places you start to see signs of wear. There is none of that. It's so incredible how well this is held up. Another great thing about having such a durable jacket is the fact that you can go out and use this thing hard the way it was designed to be used without having to worry about it. Now, these are still available online, and I know you can get them for somewhere around $200 to $400, depending on the model, the vintage, all that stuff. But this one obviously holds a special place in my heart, so I want to make sure I take care of it the best I can, but I'm going to still use it the way a jacket is meant to be used. And what that means is that I can go out and I can get firewood, I can go out and snow blow the driveway, I can go out for a hike, I can do all those things, all those outdoor activities, use this thing the way it was designed to be used without worrying about it falling apart and treating it too delicately. This is basically workwear. Now, I'm no historian, I can't tell you exactly how to date your Filson garment if you are picking one up secondhand or you're on eBay or something like that. But some of the things you can look for are the logo. I know that the logo has changed quite a bit. If you look at a modern day Filson logo, they use, I believe, a very blocky, all caps logo. This one here is one of their older diamond logos. A lot of times too, you will also see different taglines with it. One of the oldest Filson taglines is, "Might as well have the best." If you see that on there, chances are it's a pretty old garment. One of the other things you can look for is the way they size it. Now, unfortunately, now they've switched over to normal, small, medium, large, XL sizing. But back in the day, they sized these the same way that they would size suit jackets. So this one here is actually a 44. My father was a little bit bigger than I am. But for me, it actually works well because if I want to layer up and I want to put a sweatshirt on underneath, it fits perfectly. And honestly, with outerwear, you want to be able to have that freedom of movement without having the sleeves hanging off the end of your hands, of course. But those are two things you can look for. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the very early Filson jackets, I think in the 40s, actually had, instead of normal plastic buttons like this, they had buttons which actually had Filson and Co. Stamped on the outside there. So some of those are really cool and old. These actually do have Filson stamped on the snaps, but you could go really into detail. You could become Indiana Jones and find yourself maybe one of the earliest models that's out there, but my recommendation is to find one which is sized like a suit jacket, because that's more than likely back when the Filson family still owned the company. Unfortunately, since then, it's been sold to an investment firm, then resold to another investment firm, and that's why when you look at Filson these days, they're much less a workwear company and becoming more of a lifestyle company. And a lot of their core products have remained the same. I know that a lot of their Mackinaw wool is still excellent. A lot of their luggage is still made the way it used to be, but now they're getting into things like watches, and their watches are not cheap. We're talking $800 for a quartz watch, and if you really like it, hey, God bless. I'm not paying $800 for a quartz watch, and unfortunately, it seems like Filson is really starting to go the same way a lot of other companies are, which is just owned by corporations and controlled ultimately by the shareholders. And that could be a good thing as long as they hold on to their core values. You can certainly have a great company that is owned by a corporation. However, for me, I really like to have the stuff from back in the heyday, back when they were doing what they were known best for, making a wonderful product, and sort of celebrating that time in their history. It just so happens that that works out pretty well because the one that I have in my closet is from then. So that's kind of my little brief rundown of my dad's Filson Mackinaw Cruiser. It's just a wonderful jacket. Sometimes the older vintage stuff that has some history to it is worth more in both sentimental value and monetary value than the new stuff. And this certainly falls under that category. Thank you so much for watching Beast Made Reviews. I'm Carl, and I'll see you next time.